Off the Record with Michael Landsberg is brought to you by the Keg Steakhouse and Bar. For great steaks, good friends, see you tonight.
IC belt, and that was a big...
All right, let's talk about the state of wrestling right now with Bret Hart, who is looking good and sounding good. And I want to ask you about Triple H. When you left the WWF back then, he was kind of a minor player. He was an up-and-coming guy, but he was kind of a not minor player. Now, not only is he incredibly big in the ring, physically and of stature as well, but also influence in the company. Writes it, he books it, he does an incredible amount of things. Is that a good thing for the company? Are you surprised, and is he up for it?
I don't know. I always thought of Hunter as a real ass kiss. He had his nose so far up Vince's ass that, and Sean's, and like he was never a straight guy. I don't have much regard for Hunter. I thought he was not a straight guy. Never one of the boys. Never one of the guys in the dressing room. He had his own agenda and was a very sneaky, kind of cowardly kind of guy. That's my take on him.
Par for the course in wrestling, though, because those guys do get ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately they do, yeah. But I don't think, when I look back at my career, I like to think that I was loved by the wrestlers in the dressing room had a lot of respect for me, and they appreciated the work I put in, and they understood that I was a team player. And I don't think anyone could say the same thing about Hunter Helmsley.
How about Shawn Michaels? Because he is coming up on this show in a couple of weeks. And whatever you say now, we'll play this clip for him. He was the guy that you wrestled against Survivor Series, that took the belt from you, that you felt betrayed you, that you felt was afraid of you in the end. What are your thoughts about him now?
I'd say he was a two-faced, lying chicken shit. And I'm probably being nice to him.
And now?
I don't think that's a snake that never changes stripes. Sean, he was the kind of guy that would make friends with you or bury the hatchet with you 10 minutes later, and 10 minutes later he'd be out there stabbing you in the back again. You couldn't make peace with him. He was a guy, and the guy that was, I think he had put a new meaning to the word sort of prima donna or self. He had such a huge ego, and I think you always got to have a lot of ego to become a champion. I'm sure people say I have an ego, and I think I do, or everyone does. And if you're going to be a big star, you have to have an ego. You have to. It sort of comes down to believing in yourself. But Sean was a guy that was very insecure and very, I think, weak as a person, and he. Well,
let me throw out some other names to you. Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's coming back. What are your thoughts on that?
I have nothing but the highest regard for Steve Austin. I think he worked for everything he got. He was a great wrestler. One of the handful of guys that I would love to have wrestled one last time. I don't have a bad thing to say about him. I wished I had heard from him all these years. I'd never heard from him after Owen passed away. And I think someone told me he had a hard time with dealing with stuff like that. And I think him and Owen had their problems when they wrestled each other. And I remember seeing Steve even in Calgary, and I told him, I said that I felt bad because when he got hurt and hurt his neck, and he was pretty hurt pretty badly. And I think Owen Owen used to turn the business off and go home and spend every moment with the family kind of thing, and he didn't really think about Steve and his family. And I remember I kind of agreed with Steve being disappointed, had hurt feelings towards Owen. And I told him, I said I thought he was right, and that Owen should have been a little more considerate and should have called him to see how he was doing. But I mean, I always liked Steve. Him and I have nothing but the highest regard for him.
The Rock.
Same thing. I saw The Rock. The first thing I said about The Rock when I saw him, and I watched him for the first couple of weeks, I said, that guy's the franchise. That's the guy that is going to take my spot and become and he did. He had everything going for him. He was a good-looking guy, a good body, and a lot of athleticism, and being a third-generation wrestler, he had a good idea what it took to be a wrestler, and he was a good guy. I don't know what he's like so much today. I imagine, he's had such a rise now that.
If you were advising him, would you tell him to do what he's doing, which is to leave the company and go to Hollywood and give it a shot, or would you tell him to stay or try to mix the two?
I tell him to do whatever makes him happy. He should never be a slave to the business, but he's in a position to call his own shots. Do whatever he wants. But I will say that I think of all the guys, he deserved it, and I've always been very proud of him and glad that he had the success that he had.
I think I got to ask you this question because wrestling fans, no matter what, believe what they want to believe, and they think everything's a work, and they think that in the end everyone will come back, and you still must get asked all the time, when are you going to wrestle again?
They asked me that in my wheelchair.
They asked you that in your wheelchair. Does it ever shock you how much they really don't buy the reality of the planet Earth? And maybe that's the beauty of wrestling, is that it's a diversion.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I never minded, but I found it kind of odd, and sometimes I find myself going more, strictly in my own mind, like, could I do it again? Like, if I want to set a goal for myself and say, okay, look, 1 year from now I am going to come back and I am going to wrestle. Could I do it? And I think I could. I think, being honest, if I want to set that kind of goal for myself, I could pull myself together physically and actually have one last match. I mean, I wouldn't do it because I'm obviously with concussion problems and stuff like that, and there's a lot of reasons why I wouldn't do it. But if I had to do it, and if it was something that I could target as a goal to say, could I prepare myself for it? Yeah, but I mean, I have no desire or interest in ever doing that.
And if you were going to wrestle one more time, and you needed someone that you could trust, as you do every time you get in the ring, but in this case, special circumstances, one match, one time, who is it?
Well, I would have said Curt Hennig up until now. I'd have probably top of my head say Benoit, because he's sort of my favorite. But I would love to have wrestled Kurt Angle. I think he's like the one guy that I really love watching and I have a lot of regard for. I've never met him.
Bret Hart, the businessman, if you're going to script it, in terms of money, in terms of impact, in terms of pay-per-view buys, who is it?
If I was doing it for strictly the box office, I would...
And there are those who have done it strictly for box office.
I would probably wrestle Vince, I guess. I think that's the natural, Loser goes to hell match.
Well, some would say one of those guys is going to hell anyway. We got a lot more to talk about in this unbelievable interview with Bret Hart. Stay with us.